This is definitely a more of a national matter, and one that I've had to listen to some horrendous stories from across the island from lots of different women and their partners. So it was one of those matters where I felt how best to approach this would be to firstly listen to these people and then try to come up together with a strategy to try and tackle this together with Manx Care to try and find out how we can improve the service delivery. Due to practical reasons, some women have been placed next to women who maybe suffered a miscarriage or found out that their baby has sadly passed away, and they're sat with people who are either heavily pregnant or seeing the specialist for different reasons. And that juxtaposition of the two different stages of a pregnancy, which I don't think anybody would find that situation an easy one to handle or to deal with. So I understand the pressures that Manx Care have been under to ensure that every woman is looked after and cared for. However, when it comes to practical care, there definitely has been a lacking there, and I'm really pleased to hear that they are addressing this point, and actually they are actively going to change the way that women are supported during those difficult and very obviously complex pregnancies.
And you say that this is a national issue and that you've had people from all over getting in contact with you. Roughly how many people have raised this with you as being something that really does need to be addressed, and soon?
Well, on a personal level, I could probably say 10, 15 people. On a more national level, probably about 30, 40 people who've been in touch with me. This is just people who have had the confidence to come forward to speak to me. That doesn't mean that that's the be all and end all of the problem. This is a very difficult conversation for people to still have. It's one of those topics really that we still don't really talk about publicly because there's still a bit of a taboo about it. We don't talk about miscarriage. We don't really talk about ectopic pregnancies. We don't really talk about that stage before the 12 weeks when we finally announce that you're going to be having this baby. It's all very shrouded in this. Don't talk about it just yet, just in case anything was to go wrong. And that then gives those women basically up to 12 weeks of not knowing really who to talk to, who to share their news with. And it's a really difficult period of time for those women. And then if they then do find that do miscarry or lose that baby, it's just a very difficult process for them. So hopefully this new relocated EPAU, so that's the Early Pregnancy Assessment Unit, will provide a more discreet entrance to the assessment unit for women to either come into or out of. I've had 2 children myself, and so while you have that scan appointment and you receive your information that you have got a successful pregnancy, you then walk through the hospital and out through the cafe area. Now, if you're trying to, let family and friends know first, you've already bumped into sort of a few people in the cafe area, and your news then becomes Isle of Man news, But if you're then in a situation where you have sadly lost your baby, you're having to then still have to go through the cafe and out the entrance. So this tiny change for giving a different entrance and exit out of the unit will make a massive impact for those women, because they're not having to face people when they're just not quite ready to face people yet. They haven't had that opportunity to even process what's happened to them. So a second improvement that they've dedicated was a quiet room where women can go whilst they're waiting their scan results, and this room will then allow them to receive their outcome privately. So if there is a problem identified, and obviously you get asked to wait in the waiting area at the moment, surrounded by other people who are pregnant or maybe also waiting to receive news, this quiet room will actually be a place where you can go and just gather yourself, gather your thoughts, and then obviously receive that outcome in private, and giving that person a little bit of time to be able to process what's actually happening and what the next steps are. And then the final thing was that they're going to use a separate room for antenatal scans, so that women who may be experiencing a miscarriage will not come into contact with any other patients within the outpatients area. So it's really good that they're looking at how they can ensure that the running of the unit doesn't directly impact the people who are the service users. We understand that they were under pressures for space, resource, time. However, that shouldn't be at the detriment to the person who may be experiencing pregnancy loss. We need to ensure that that person comes first, and all the other practical issues, which I'm sure are extensive, are dealt with in-house and not actually having an impact on the person who's receiving that care. So Manx Care have actually recognised this for themselves, that there's an issue. And there was a survey done in October 23, which basically highlighted that there are definite areas of improvement required. Alongside of that, Manx Care, to be fair to them, have actually looked to the UK and the government's pregnancy loss review, which identified 73 recommendations. So between the two reviews that have happened, it's really positive news that Manx Care are looking at that in the whole and seeing which ones are identifiable for the Isle of Man and in the Isle of Man context, which could be improved upon, and actually using that evidence to be able to change how they deliver the service. I'm really fortunate that people have reached out to me, and my Facebook post that I made about this written question in the first place has received an enormous response from people pouring out their experiences for me to read and hopefully then feed back to Manx Care. So, I do not ever take for granted just how brave that is for people to share that information, because this is a very complex, difficult subject, one that we don't talk about enough, and one that we should maybe talk about more, because really, ultimately, if we don't get this right, then the future of people wanting for their mental health, maybe going on to try for another baby, or their other future plans, this can impact somebody for the rest of their life. And, we really need to get this part of clinical care correct and not just see it as something that has a loss, but maybe something that they can work on together to be able to support that woman and her partner.
Some of the bigger issues when you go for a scan, if you're having an early miscarriage or potentially you've been diagnosed as having an early miscarriage, you have to go down to the main pregnancy scan unit. So you can be around lots of pregnant women. You'll be around other women if you're sent to ward 4 who potentially are pregnant, which can be really hard, I think, mentally for someone who is going through a miscarriage. Being around people who are visibly pregnant, that can be really distressing.
What are some of the changes then that you think could improve things? Yeah,
having a separate unit, which it sounds like is the plan of action, is going to be great for women who go through miscarriages, especially early miscarriages. With late miscarriages, there needs to be more done on island. It's slightly different with late miscarriages because a lot of women, for instance, have to go to the UK still for the later miscarriages. Medical terminations also have to be carried out in the UK, from what we've been told by numerous people who have come forwards. So there does need to be more changes on that, but this is kind of a step in the right direction.
Manx Care is in the process of moving the unit. They're creating things like the separate scan room, a quiet room for those awaiting scan results, and also a kind of discreet entrance. Do you think those are some things that'll help as well?
Yeah, those are all things that can only benefit women who are experiencing miscarriage and early loss, definitely.
And I guess finally, it was expected that the EPAU would be relocated in January. That doesn't seem to have happened yet. When would you like to see the service up and running?
Well, I think it needs to it should have happened, yesterday. It's something that we've needed for a long time, and they really need to get it up and running as soon as possible, because miscarriage is one of those unspoken about things, and women are left, even nowadays, in some awful positions. And it's not even just about having a separate unit, it's also about staff training as well. There needs to be staff trained in bereavement on the wards with the women that they're working with, but as soon as possible.
Thank you for making it to the end of the Little Manx Radio newscast. You are obviously someone with exquisite taste. May I politely suggest you might want to subscribe to this and a wide range of Manx Radio podcasts at your favourite podcast provider, so our best bits will magically appear on your smartphone. Thank you.